Hello, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about animal agriculture. I'm Arnav, and with me I have Shreepal and Abhinav. So, what is animal agriculture? Well, basically, animal agriculture is the raising of animals for human consumption. This means that it's an anthropogenic process, or basically that it's a human caused process. Animal agriculture itself has a connotation of factory farming, which you might have seen a lot. The modern approach to animal agriculture is large scale industrial farming, which does have various environmental effects, as we're going to see. Some examples of this might include feedlots for cattle or pigs, or fish farms, such as the salmon over here that gets turned into salmon fillets. Now, why is that animal agriculture a problem? Well, basically, the gist of what we're going to tell you today is how animal agriculture can have adverse effects on the environment. And it has both short-term and long-term effects. First, we have chemical runoff. Industrial fertilizers and manure cause a whole bunch of runoff, causing chemicals to leach into our water supply. Now, the nitrates and the phosphates in animal feed and manure often oversaturate the ground and can seep into groundwater and water bodies. Now, this can lead to eutrophication, which is a sudden growth in algae, which actually harms the water bodies, as it causes other organisms to suffer as they don't get enough oxygen because the algae are taking it all up. Now, another short-term effect is the high water usage of animal agriculture. Now, it's usually very water intensive, uh, I guess, a system, industrial farming, because animals need a whole lot more water than plants, because the food used to feed animals needs water as well as the animals themselves. Now, the high water usage can lead to depletion of groundwater and shortages of fresh water for people or other crops, as well as saltwater incursion, which occurs when salt water rushes into the cavity of an aquifer when the groundwater is depleted. In addition to these short-term effects, animal agriculture also can create long-lasting change. The foremost of those is climate change. Because we are raising animals, they do release lots of gases, primarily methane and carbon dioxide. These gases cause the greenhouse effect, which causes the global temperature to increase, which has its own whole host of problems. Now, deforestation is another effect. And because animals and their feed especially take up lots of space, natural forest lands need to be cleared in order for animal agriculture to even happen. As besides the animals, they can be relatively packed up, but the amount of space needed to just feed the animals for because of acres of corn and other common feed plants, forests have to be burned down or taken down, which also is harmful to the environment. What relation does this have to the Earth's subsystems? Well, it affects a lot of them. The atmosphere gets depleted because of air pollution and greenhouse gases. The hydrosphere, chemical runoff pollutes waters, and the water-intensive practice of industrial farming causes groundwater depletion. And the biosphere, well, deforestation, in deforestation, you may convert a very species-rich biosphere, a very just a life-dense biome, such as a rainforest, into just a pasture where there may only be a couple species. Therefore, you have a loss of biodiversity because of industrial agriculture.
So to elaborate on each of the different impacts that animal agriculture has, here's like some evidence. So for deforestation, forests often are cleared for new fields and plantations, and cattle is actually the most significant cause for total forest replacement, with nearly 60% of world's arable land used for beef production. In terms of climate change, manure management alone accounts for 14% of all agricultural greenhouse gas emissions in the US. Manure also emits ammonia, which combined with other air pollutants like nitrogen oxides and sulfates, creates deadly small particles for humans. And machinery in animal agriculture, such as industrial machines, burn fossil fuels, emitting greenhouse gases. Another impact is chemical runoff. And before manure is spread, it is placed close to these manure lagoons, which contain chemicals and decomposing bacteria, break down the manure. And the mixture of this manure and lagoon chemicals are prone to spill. And that causes eutrophication, which basically increases algae growth when it encounters bodies of water, which is bad because it'll basically it'll cause less sunlight to be exposed to other underwater plants. And then another impact is water usage. So water is used to grow crops that are fed to animals, as well as for drinking purposes. And then the increase in consumption of animal products may put pressure to freshwater resources. This water usage is based on the production system, so like intensive or extensive, and the type of animal that is being used for the animal agriculture. So here's some graphs and tables for the evidence. So for our food's carbon footprint, there is a massive range between the different types of animals, and grazing beef has the greatest carbon footprint with about 60 kilograms carbon dioxide per kilogram product. And then in another graph, there's the total forest replacement. So as shown there, cattle has about 45.1 million hectares of deforestation. And then in the last table, that shows green and blue water use per kilogram. And so green water and blue water use is the most for beef. And then there's the other assorted animals such as pork, chicken, and other foods like eggs and milk.
So let's move on to the potential strategies that we can use to mitigate animal agriculture impacts. And for our first one, we have plant-based meat substitutes, which are also known as meat alternatives. And for these, there's like tofu, which is basically made out of soybean. And we also have Impossible or Beyond Meat, which are actually different companies that produce plant-based meat products and that are useful substitutes from like regular meat, but they actually do taste exactly like real meat. And we also have jackfruit. So we can also move on to disincentivizing meat diets. And for example, we can place a tax on meats, or we can promote vegan diets through social media and active campaigning. And also some research has shown that mixing seaweed into livestock feed, which is from a study from the University of California at Davis, showed that like seaweed in cows can produce a reduction of up to 82% of methane emissions. And since cows tend to have like the most methane emissions out of all the different livestock, this is a huge impact that we can use. And moreover, there are various benefits that come out of like these different solutions. For example, using alternative plant-based options and also disincentivizing meat diets can decrease demand for meat products. And by doing so, we can minimize the land use, chemical runoff, and irrigation for animal agriculture. And this also leads to less deforestation overall, and that protects our biodiversity. And furthermore, we can also reduce methane emissions by mixing in the seaweed, as the research has shown, and that can lower greenhouse gas pollution and decrease climate change as a result. Because like methane has almost, I think, about 4 times the impact in terms of like greenhouse gas pollution as carbon dioxide. So it does make like a pivotal role in this like fight against climate change. And thanks for watching. I hope you learned something today. And also, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach us out through the comment section.